Hi, I'm Jeremy Mogtater here at the Michigan State University Student Organic Farm. I'm happy to talk to you guys today about preventative strategies for pest and disease management. One of the most important strategies for preventative disease and pest management is making sure that we have healthy soil conditions for your plants to grow in, adequate water and sunlight, so that they can grow with as much vigor as possible. As you can see, this soil has a lot of organic matter in it through compost addition and is also fairly tilthy, has nice soil structure. All of those things are going to help plant root growth, and we usually do soil testing every year or every few years to try to make sure that we're not out of balance with any of our major macro or micronutrients. Variety selection is also super important as a preventative strategy in pest and disease management. So as an example here, we're standing in front of some kale. We choose to skew our production towards those more disease and pest resistant varieties just to make our production a little bit easier. We still grow some of the other varieties because of customer demand for them, but we just weight our production towards the more pest and disease resistant varieties. So if you have a key pest that you know, or a disease that you know is really problematic, bottom rotten lettuce, etc., then looking and selecting a variety that is naturally resistant to that level of pest or disease pressure is going to take that work off of you and put it onto the crop. One of the things that we do is timing of planting to help us with plant vigor. So we want to choose to plant crops like the broccoli that's behind me, and we try to pick varieties as well as time those varieties at times of the year when they're going to have the most robust growth. And that helps not only with their yields, but it also helps them with competing with pest pressure. So if we have some imported cabbage worms or flea beetle damage that are chewing or damaging the leaves of those crops, that they continue to grow foliage faster than the flea beetles are damaging them, and that we're able to keep those crops growing ahead of the curve and making nice, beautiful broccoli plants. Succession planting is also an important strategy that we use in terms of pest and disease management because it allows us to get younger, more vigorous crops out into the field where they are not infected by disease at that point and can grow and put on new leaves and produce new crops prior to becoming infected. We sometimes try to space those new plantings out away from our old plantings in order to make sure that the spread of disease isn't as easy. When we're harvesting, we always make sure that we harvest the newest succession first and the oldest succession last, so that we're not inadvertently spreading diseases from our earlier plantings onto our new plantings. So crop spacing for airflow can also be a very important disease management strategy. So if we can plant our tomatoes and then a bed of peppers and a bed of eggplant and another bed of tomatoes so that there's increased distance between the tall tomato crops and the shorter pepper and eggplant crops, you'll get increased airflow, which will allow for better drying conditions and decrease your susceptibility of your crop to foliar pathogens. Exclusion can be a very important preventative strategy for managing pests as well as diseases. Rime is it's like saying Kleenex, it's a branded name. So this is actually Agribon, or what other people would call floating row cover if you wanted to give it a more generic name. So here we have baby arugula. And if we were using exclusion on this for flea beetles, we would want to make sure that right after seeding, before the crop emerged, that we covered it with rime and buried the rime around the edges with soil, either by using a shovel to push the rime into the soil or by putting a little shovel of dirt over it. The reason for wanting that seal right around the edge is that if you're going to exclude flea beetles, which are small crawling and hopping insects that travel right along the soil surface, you need a good tight barrier. Once the flea beetles get underneath the rime, the exclusion is no longer effective, and in fact, in that instance, you've just created a protected habitat where there's no predators, it's nice and warm and comfortable, and the flea beetle population can actually get even more severe. Hoop houses can be a very effective tool in the use of excluding pests and diseases. In the instance of tomato late blight, which requires water on the leaf surface in order to create an infection, the hoop house prevents rain from hitting the plants, and if you're using drip irrigation instead of overhead irrigation, leaf wetness is reduced and thereby creating a situation where you don't get infection. In the hoop houses, sanitation is particularly important because we're putting 3 and sometimes 4 crops in the house per year. And while we do rotate the crops, we also remove a lot of the crop residue so that any overwintering or residual pest and disease pressure is removed from the house. We're able to make sure that we're keeping a cleaner and less pest and disease filled space that creates better crop production.